はい、それでは次のセッションです。次のセッションは A さんで、Simulating all computers using Arduino microcontrollers というタイトルで発表しています。
Hello. My name is David. I'm a programmer and a hardware enthusiast from Sydney, Australia. Before I start, I want to express my gratitude to Dasuki and the rest of the organisers for inviting me to speak here today, or accepting my talk. Thank you very much. Normally I travel around the world and I try to convince people to use the Go programming language. But today I'm here to do something entirely different. Today I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about two retro computing projects that I completed in the last couple of years. And just before I begin, I do want to mention this talk is dedicated to the memory of my friend Andrew Stone, who started the Raspberry Pi group here in Sydney. And through his group, it's how I gained the skills and knowledge to complete these projects. Okay, so the first project I want to talk about is a simulator of the PDP-11. Which, I like this, I'm getting laughs. I thought following the OpenBS server I would have nothing. And I built this simulator using an Arduino. So in my opinion, the PDP is one of the most important mini-computers of the 1970s. This was the machine, and this is Ken and Dennis. This was the machine that Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie used to develop Unix and develop the C programming language. And every computer that you interact with, every computer in front of you today, can trace its heritage back to the architectural styles of the PDP and the work of Ken and Dennis. As a historical artifact, the PDP has tremendous importance for anyone who's interested in retro computing, or to be really honest, anyone who's interested in computer programming at all. The PDP was the predecessor of the VAX 1170, which is the first 32-bit mini-computer that ran BSD Unix. Dave Cutler, the author of VMS, the other operating system of the 11780, left DEC after an argument and joined Microsoft and took VMS with him. And VMS became the foundation of what became Windows NT. So what better way to learn about the PDP, the history, C, and Unix, than to build one to simulate it ourselves. Now, where I got the idea for this was when I saw this pop up in Hacker News. This is Julian Smith's PDP-11JS project. This is PDP-11 running inside a browser. And I thought that this was the coolest thing since sliced bread. But I thought, if we can put it inside a browser, can we put it inside something even smaller? And so, first of all, I wrote to Julian and I asked him, would you mind if I wrote, if I did this? And he's like, you didn't have a problem. And so I first translated his simulator from JavaScript into Go, because I knew Go better and there was some tricky bits. And then I translated that from Go to C++. and inside the Arduino environment. I won't go into the specifics of this, I gave a whole talk, there's a link at the end. But anyway, so now we have the software for our emulator. Now we need to load a program into it. Now, the PDP had 128 kilowords, and a word is 16 bits, so it had 256K of memory. Now, if you've ever played with any microcontrollers, you'll know that they don't have anywhere near as much. The Arduino Uno has 2.5 kilobytes of RAM. The Arduino Mega, which was the platform I chose to try and build this on, has 8 kilobytes of RAM. But it turns out that there's a solution. And to talk about how we can accomplish this, we need to talk a little bit about the architecture of the PDP. The PDP is really, really interesting. All of the major components, memory, I/O, microprocessor itself work asynchronously and coordinate via this shared backplane called the Unibus. Now this is a little bit different to the way that we think of CPUs today. Like we think of the CPU at the top and everything hangs off it. But back in the PDP days, this was different. If you look at this diagram, it almost looks like a network. There are no hard guarantees about who will have priority and how much bandwidth you'll get. So because of this property, because of the way the Unibus works, we only need to simulate instruction decoding, execution, and these 8 general purpose registers. The memory can be implemented somewhere else. Because, as I came to realize, from the point of view of the CPU, from the point of view of the CPU here, it doesn't know anything about the things that are connected to it. So any instruction that references memory always boils down to just a read or write on the Unibus. So there's no way for the CPU to observe memory directly. It doesn't even know where memory is or how it's connected to it. It has to ask the Unibus to read the data on its behalf. I think this gave me the solution to get around the Arduino address limit. Now, I was already using the SD card to simulate the hard drive connected to this. So I thought, well, why can't I just make another file on that SD card and I'll just put all the memory on that? I mean, the SD card probably wouldn't last very long because every read and write I'm writing into the SD card, but that doesn't matter, they're cheap. So the thing was, this actually worked because the CPU has no idea that its memory is actually backed by an SD card. It just asks for a block, just asks for an address and gets a value. And so this is a very terrible video. This is actually simulated down here, and just for extra authenticity, I had to connect to a terminal, and you can see how slow it is. But the thing is that it's actually working. And even more amazingly, it didn't wear out the SD card. And this is actually due to a property of the cards themselves. Now, all SD cards mandate that you read and write in terms of sectors. And a sector is 512 bytes. So this means the Arduino has to maintain a buffer of 512 bytes in your precious 2.5K of memory to cache that page from the SD card. So effectively, the Arduino had implemented a little 512 byte level 1 cache. Now obviously this wasn't designed to do this, and there were plenty of cases where it thrashed, but it basically let me boot Unix and verify my simulator was working just by using the SD card. And this gave me the confidence to try some more ambitious things. So as I said, using the SD card, it was a kind of 1950s solution, and it gave me 1950s performance. I needed a way to connect real memory to the Arduino. But amongst all the other problems, the Arduino doesn't have enough I/O lines to even drive a full static RAM chip. Now, we could do something like we could get an SPI RAM. And there's a very common one which is used in a lot of projects, the microchip 23K256, which is a 32 kilobyte RAM with an SPI interface. Now, it's not very common on Arduino projects because it's a 3.3 volt device, and they just play really badly in the Arduino world. But worse, if we need 256K of RAM, we'll need 8 of these chips. So we'll need 8 chip select lines, and we're coming back to the problem we started with, not having enough address lines. Luckily for me, Microchip sell a bigger chip, the 23LC1024, and these two were the last left in the world when I ordered them. I had to come all the way from England. This is a 5-volt chip, and each of them holds 128 kilobytes, so I only need 2, so it only cost me 2 address lines. Now this is a picture of me attempting to bring it up on the breadboard, and it wasn't very successful. I had a memory test routine, it was not reliable, and sometimes it would be rubbish. And part of the problem with this is that the Arduino drives the SIDECAR communication at about 4 megahertz. And in reading around, it became very clear to me that breadboards are just not designed for those high frequencies. There's too much. Each of these is effectively a long metal strip, the plastic insulated between it. And anyone who has more electronics knowledge than I have knows that this is actually just a row of capacitors. So a breadboard is really good for simple circuits, but when you're actually talking in a couple of megahertz, you need to move on to a more finished design. And so that's what I did. Just built it up on a standard Arduino prototyping shield. If any of you have these breadboarding kits, you know they come with a box of wires of different lengths. These are perfect because they're pre-cut to the lengths. You just bend them into what you want. So there we go. We've now got an Arduino with a code with 256K of RAM on it. Okay. Next up, we need to set this is the original RK05 disk drive. Does anyone know how many megabytes this stored? It's not a whole number, by the way. 2.5 megabytes. Right, but this is your root drive. This is slash. This is the root drive. Now, obviously, I was going to use the SD card. I had an image of this as a file. But how do we make this virtual device communicate with our PDP? The way the PDP works is all of the I/O to various devices are memory mapped. You read and write a particular address, and that's funneled via the bus down to the device. And so, for our simulator, we make sure we capture that address where it's expecting the drive to be, and we just translate that into the right block, the right offset from the SD card, read those 512 bytes into memory, and then we set an interrupt flag for the CPU, so the next time it comes around, it knows that the page is ready. And we do the same thing for the console. The way the console works is the PDP writes a word to a memory address, and it expects it to go out the console. And it checks another memory address for when you press the key. It's written into that memory address by the hardware. And this is really easy to map to the Arduino serial driver. Whenever we find a value in this address, we just send it to the serial port. And whenever we get a value from the serial port, we just put it in that spot in memory. So the big question is, how fast was this simulator? In fact, some of you are laughing, you probably already know the answer. Now the PDP doesn't have a clock speed like we think of with computers today. It's not 2.5 gigahertz or anything like that. The speed of the PDP is defined by how fast the memory works. Faster memory literally means the computer moves faster. When this thing was released, you could have core memory or semiconductor memory. And the semiconductor memory was faster because it had faster access times. Now I came across this diagram in the back of one of the manuals, which gives you effectively the instruction times in microseconds for each of the different ways of constructing an operation. So now we knew how long it took to execute an instruction. Maybe we could figure out, we could compare that to how fast my simulator is doing it. Now, anyone who's done the Arduino programming knows that you program directly on the Arduino. You don't have an operating system, there's no GDB, there's no profiling tools. So how are we going to figure out how fast our simulator is going around this loop of executing instructions? I tried a few methods, but in one of the comment on my blog posts, a reader suggested that I should basically make a clock. So each time we start simulating the instruction, we raise a pin, and then when we get to like the work of simulating instruction, and we're just about to go around again, we lower that pin. So instead of a clock going in, we make a clock coming out. And I made a simple frequency counter using another Arduino, and that let me calculate how fast the simulator was working. So how fast do you think it ran? Well, I'm running a bit behind time, so I'll just tell you. That's not gigahertz, that is 11,000 cycles per second. And it took a lot of tuning to get that number. Indeed. Okay, so it's time to break out the big guns. as much as I love this like minimalist idea of implementing a 1960s mini computer on like the basic Arduino, it just wasn't going to fly. So the next step up is to the Arduino Duo, which is a 32-bit ARM processor, still in the same form factor. And so what that ordered online, came in a couple of days. I recompiled the sketch, installed it on that. 85,000 hertz. Okay, so it's still a small number, but it is an 8 times speed up. So that's pretty good. So how does this compare to the real PDP? We take this instruction, which is a very simple instruction, add, which takes one memory cycle, because we have to get the instruction out of memory to know what we're doing. But the operands, R0 and R1, are free, like you don't need to talk to memory for that. So on the PDP, using that table that we saw earlier, and assuming memory is 1 nanosecond, yes, then you get a megahertz. Compared to Arduino Duo, 85,000 hertz, pretty poor. But, if we take a more complicated instruction, like this one, which is add the value in the address stored in register 0 with the address stored in register 1 and put it back in register 1, we have to do 3 memory reads and 1 write. So the PDP slows down to about 300,000 hertz. Obviously, my simulator is not as fast as that, but you'll notice that it hasn't slowed down by as much. In fact, it's running about 20% of the speed. And that turns out to be pretty reasonable. If you have this is not the most complicated instruction stream as well. So when the real PDP would have to slow down a lot to talk to memory, mine kind of kept up. So this is the final form. It's a big stack of boards. Each of them has a purpose. They're all useful. And this is another terrible video of this is the code actually running on that. W doesn't exist. CD is called CHDR. This is a very old version of Unix. So that's the first project I want to talk about. The second one I want to talk about is an Apple I simulator built again using Arduino components. Alright, the heart of the Apple I was the legendary 6502. It was introduced in 1975 by the legendary designer Chuck Peter. And it was the heart and soul of computing from the 70s and into the 80s. It powered everything. The Famicom, the VIC-20, the C64, all the Ataris, the Apple II, and the Apple I. And it's that last one we're going to focus on. The Apple I was essentially a 6502 computer with 4K of RAM, these lovely things down here, and 256 bytes of ROM. All you had to do was supply your own power supply, keyboard, composite monitor, and you're away in business. The Apple I also used 61 chips, there are 61 individual ICs in this board. And the good news is that we can emulate all of these, the RAM, the ROM, the interrupt controller, all this glue logic with a microcontroller. Now, I'm not the first person to try and do this. There's a project called the L-Star Software-Defined Computer. This has been on Hackaday a few times. They've got 4 chips there. They've got the propeller, its EEPROM, 6502, and some RAM. So that's 4 chips. Pretty good effort. Here's another example. This has got 3 chips. It's got the 6502, so over there. This is a PIC microcontroller and the RAM down there. So they got it down to 3 chips. And this is mine. It has 2 chips. We have obviously the 6502, and we have an 18 mega 102 1285p, 84p. Runs about a third of the speed of the Apple I. So this is kind of like the end. I'm skipping ahead a little bit. Let's go back to how I got this idea. So unlike the previous project you saw, this is not the simulator. This is a real 6502 executing real machine code. The plan was the rest of the computer computer will be simulated by the Arduino. And to validate the idea that the Arduino could be the clock, I made a tight little assembly loop. I think this is the clock in here. So the Arduino is making a clock, and I'm just watching the address lines here. And it worked. So the next phase was to build a prototype on a shield. And so this shield that I built on standard protoboard has 40 connectors here and 40 connectors for the Arduino, so we can jump in between them and wire them all up. And this little thing here is presenting the no-op instruction, EA, on the data bus. So every time the CPU goes to read an instruction, it gets the no-op instruction. And so it increments the address, and then goes to look for the next instruction, and always reads EA. So it just wraps around. We call this free running mode. It's a good way to prove that it's actually working. You don't need to simulate the rest of the computer. It's kind of hard-coded to always read no-ops. Now, I wanted to use an LCD panel so I could debug and things like that, and all these patch wires would have got in the way. So I put the breadboard literally upside down and back to front, so it stuck out this way rather than going underneath. And I called this the SIDECAR, because it's on the side. And in this picture, you can see it's reporting some values of different reads and writes. I forget. I think they were by different places, like RAM, ROM, and if they were reads and write. And here's a little video that when I got it working. Now, the CPU is working at a very low clock speed. But you can see it's running a basic program. It's going to be just up here in a second. Yep. Hello world. You can see it's actually so it all worked. And that's coming out of the Arduino serial console. Okay. The Apple One shipped with a 256-byte assembly language monitor called the WAS ROM. The manual actually included the full listing for the ROM in the manual. Now, our Arduino intercept reads for page FF00, and then just redirects them to the ROM, which I just had as a table of contents. So that's how the Arduino pretends to be the ROM as well as the RAM. The Apple One interfaced with the keyboard and the screen via a programmable interrupt controller, what we think of as GPIO these days. Quite similar to the PDP. Every time a key was pressed on the keyboard, that key's ASCII value was written into a memory location, and the ROM would poll this location to see has anything changed. Output works similarly. The video encoder was sometimes busy, so the ROM had to poll to make sure that the encoder was okay to accept the character, and then would write it into another location. And again, it's really straightforward to capture those and just send them to the Arduino serial library. They're just two locations in memory. We just look for those. And he writes to that, we send it to the serial library. If he reads, we just put it in a spot. Now, the original Apple One ran at about a megahertz. The Atmel that I'm using has a 16 megahertz clock. And it's the Arduino that's responsible. I say Atmel and Arduino interchangeably. I consider them because they're so synonymous. So that means, because the Atmel is in charge of generating the clock, for every one cycle that we want the 6502 to do, we have 16 cycles here, and only 16 to do real work. And that work is we have to lower the clock, we have to wait a few cycles, so we're not overclocking the CPU. And we raise the clock signal, read the address that 6502 presents, and do what it says, like read data or write data. And then we lower the clock line again so that 6502 reads that data back from us. And the problem is that even at 16 megahertz, there's just simply not enough time. Most Arduino instructions take 2 or 3 cycles, so there's just not enough time to do that. But there's a solution to this. Different 6502s have different requirements for the minimum low and the minimum high of their clock. And the one I was using had a smaller minimum, so I could basically trade time in the low for time in the high and still maintain the same clock speed, like the same time between these two pulses, by basically making that smaller and buying time. And this was possible because I had the 4 megahertz version of the clock. And this technique is called clock stretching. Now, because the Arduino is providing a clock, it's making a nice strong 5-volt signal that made it really easy to measure how fast my simulator was running. This, again, is another version of the frequency camera I made. That's the input pin, it's connected to something. This time it's got an LCD. That's really the only difference. So, for the next step, because I had it all working on a protoboard, I decided to build a little prototype. And this is a photo of me sketching it out, trying to fit all the components on some piece of perf board using the grid in my notepad. If anyone did any sprite design back in the 80s, this is exactly the same, just filling in the squares. Now, this is getting closer to the final design. I always intended it to be two boards. They could be tested independently and then stuck together. This is the Atmo board, the Arduino board, which is very simple. Most of the lines are just in through. This is the clock section here. Wiring kind of, because these fix the destination, wiring these up at 6502 is a bit more messy, but it looks very clean and it's up the right way. And this is the final product. So sandwiched together with some power, and the red thing at the back there is a serial console. And this is it connected to the frequency counter, which is assembling the frequency pin here, and we're doing 290 odd hertz, which is that's a third of the speed of the Arduino, of the original Apple II, Apple I. And so this video is of my terminal screen with the computer loaded with David Schmeck's 30th birthday demo of the Apple II. So it's actually going to reset, and we're going to run the location at 30R. This is David. I just want to say again, this is not a simulator. This is a real 6502. It's right there in that picture, running this code. All we're doing is just feeding it the instructions and the things that it expects at the right time. Okay. All right. So I'm smitten with the 12A4B. I think it's the right compromise between the pin style Arduino Uno. It just doesn't have enough I/O, and the Arduino Mega series, which just never really got any adoption. You get full 24 pins of I/O. It's 5-volt tolerant. It comes in a lovely DIP package, not surface mount. And so I decided, like, we've got the prototype here. I decided, maybe I'll try my hand at making a PCB. So there are two projects. One is EagleCAD, which is fairly well known. The other one is Fritzing. EagleCAD is really hard to use as a beginner. So I chose to use Fritzing, which has a nice feature that literally from their program you can order your PCB. They have a PCB generating service. And so a month later, these came back. I just love them. So look at these projects. They were fun and they were really challenging. I learned a lot of new skills and new tools. But if I'm being really honest, ultimately these projects have sat on my shelf for a couple of years now. After I finished them, that was it. Neither of them are useful computers in the same way that this right here in front of me is a useful computer for me. But I don't think that matters. I learned a huge amount just by doing. I learned circuit design, I learned how to use SPI, did a lot of hardware debugging, I built my own frequency counter, I learned how to lay out a PCB, I practiced my soldering a whole lot. And I also learned how computers work at a much more fundamental level than I understood before. And that's worth it. That's worth it itself. Now, electronics is a hobby, it's not my job. It's something I do for fun, when my job isn't fun. That's what a hobby is. Now, I don't get paid to work on my hobbies, but it also means that I won't be letting anyone down if they don't work. And this is the message that I want you to take away from this talk. I want you to feel safe to experiment. I want you to explore how something works by trying to build it yourself. And most of all, please don't stop yourself trying to build a project because you're afraid it might not be perfect. Thank you.
どお時間なので質問一つぐらい
1個ぐらい
あれば。
日本語でいいですよ。
You can come talk to me after if you want.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.